The small town of Greenhaven, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, had always been a place of quiet routine. Its cobblestone streets and quaint storefronts exuded charm, but beneath the surface, the townspeople held on to age-old traditions and beliefs. It was in this unassuming town that Ella Harper's story began, a story of love, courage, and breaking boundaries. Ella Harper was a dreamer. With her fiery red hair, freckled cheeks, and a heart full of curiosity, she had always stood out in a town where conformity was the norm. At 27, she was the owner of Greenhaven's only bookstore, a cozy haven filled with shelves of well-loved novels and the scent of aged paper. She loved her quiet life among the books, but deep down, she longed for something more, a love story worthy of the pages she cherished. One crisp autumn morning, Ella stood behind the counter of her shop, sipping a steaming cup of coffee as she flipped through the pages of her favorite novel. The bell above the door jingled, signaling the arrival of a customer. Looking up, she froze, her heart skipping a beat. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a confident yet unassuming presence. His skin was a rich shade of brown, and his dark, soulful eyes held a depth that seemed to pierce through the room. He was dressed casually, in a fitted black jacket and jeans, but there was an air of sophistication about him that made him stand out. "Good morning," he said, his voice smooth and warm. "I'm looking for something to read. Any recommendations?" Ella blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "Good morning," she replied, recovering quickly. "What kind of books do you like?" He smiled, a dimple appearing on his left cheek. "I'm open to anything, as long as it's good. Surprise me." Ella nodded, feeling an unexpected flutter in her chest. She led him to a shelf near the window, her fingers brushing against the spines of her favorite titles. "This one," she said, pulling out a copy of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. "It's about following your dreams and finding your purpose." He took the book from her, their hands briefly touching. "Sounds perfect. Thank you." "Ella," she said, her voice softer than usual. "Ella Harper. Nice to meet you, Ella. I'm Caleb Thompson." Over the next hour, Caleb lingered in the bookstore, browsing through shelves and occasionally asking Ella questions about different authors and genres. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, and Ella found herself laughing at his witty remarks and insightful observations. When Caleb finally approached the counter to pay for his books, he hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Ella, would you mind if I came back sometime to discuss these? I'd love to hear more of your thoughts." Ella's cheeks flushed, but she smiled. "I'd like that." As Caleb left the shop, the bell jingling behind him, Ella realized she was still smiling. For the first time in years, her heart felt alive with possibility. It didn't take long for Caleb to become a regular at the bookstore. Each visit brought new conversations, shared laughter, and a growing connection between him and Ella. They discovered a shared love for classic literature, late-night jazz, and stargazing. Caleb told Ella about his work as an architect, designing sustainable homes in cities far from Greenhaven, while Ella shared her dreams of traveling the world and writing her own stories. But not everyone in Greenhaven was as open-minded as Ella. Rumors began to circulate about the red-haired bookshop owner and the mysterious newcomer. Whispers of disapproval spread among the townspeople, their conservative values clashing with the idea of an interracial relationship. Ella's best friend, Lily, was one of the few who supported her wholeheartedly. "Don't let them get to you," Lily said one evening as they sat in Ella's living room, sipping tea. "They're just afraid of what they don't understand." "I know," Ella sighed, her gaze fixed on the flickering candlelight. "But it's hard. Caleb's amazing, and I don't want to let him go because of other people's opinions." Lily placed a reassuring hand on Ella's shoulder. "Then don't. Love is rare, Ella. If you found it, hold on to it with everything you've got." As Ella and Caleb grew closer, they began to open up about their pasts. One evening, as they sat on a blanket under the stars, Caleb shared a story that left Ella in awe of his resilience. I grew up in a tough neighborhood, he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. My mom raised me and my two brothers on her own. She worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads. There were days when we didn't know where our next meal would come from, but she never gave up. Ella reached for his hand, her heart aching for the struggles he had endured. She sounds incredible. She is, Caleb said, a small smile playing on his lips. She taught me the value of hard work and kindness. Everything I've accomplished is because of her. Ella squeezed his hand. You're amazing, Caleb. And so is your mom. I'd love to meet her someday. Caleb looked at her, his eyes shining with gratitude. You will. I promise. Despite their deepening connection, Ella and Caleb knew their relationship would face challenges. The town's disapproval was one thing, but convincing Ella's family was another matter entirely. Ella's parents, Margaret and Harold Harper, were traditionalists who valued social standing and appearances. While they loved their daughter, they often pressured her to conform to their expectations. The thought of introducing Caleb to them filled Ella with anxiety, but she knew it was a step she had to take. I want them to see what I see in you, Ella told Caleb one evening as they walked along the riverbank. I just hope they'll give you a chance. Caleb wrapped an arm around her shoulders, his voice steady and reassuring. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. As their love story unfolded, Ella and Caleb found themselves at a crossroads. They had to decide whether to fight for their relationship or let the weight of societal expectations tear them apart. Their journey was just beginning, but one thing was certain: their love was worth fighting for. Together, they would navigate the challenges ahead, proving that love could conquer even the deepest divides. The days following Ella's decision to introduce Caleb to her parents were filled with tension and anticipation. She had spent countless hours rehearsing how she would bring up Caleb during their usual Sunday dinner, but no matter how many times she played the scene in her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling of dread. Her parents' traditional views were as deeply rooted as the old oak trees that lined Greenhaven's streets. Sunday arrived too quickly for Ella's liking. The familiar aroma of roasted chicken and baked potatoes greeted her as she stepped into her parents' home. The dining room, with its antique furniture and family portraits, exuded an air of quiet formality that had always made Ella feel like a child seeking approval. Ella, darling, you're late, her mother, Margaret, chided gently, peering at her from the kitchen. Sorry, Mom. I lost track of time at the shop, Ella replied, kissing her mother's cheek. Her father, Harold, looked up from his newspaper and offered her a warm smile. Good to see you, sweetheart. How's business? It's good, Dad. Steady as usual, Ella said, taking her seat at the table. The meal began with the usual pleasantries and updates about the town, but Ella's mind was elsewhere. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding as she decided to take the plunge. Mom, Dad, there's someone I'd like you to meet, she began, her voice trembling slightly. His name is Caleb. Margaret's fork froze mid-air, her expression unreadable. Harold frowned, setting down his glass of wine. Caleb, he repeated, his tone cautious. Yes, Ella said, forcing herself to meet their eyes. He's someone very special to me. We've been seeing each other for a while now. Margaret exchanged a glance with Harold before addressing Ella. Tell us about him, she said, her tone carefully neutral. Ella launched into a description of Caleb, her words spilling out in a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She spoke of his intelligence, his kindness, and his passion for architecture. But as she spoke, she noticed her parents' expressions growing more reserved. Finally, Harold cleared his throat. And where is Caleb from, Ella? The question was loaded, and Ella knew it. He grew up in the city, she said cautiously. And his family? Margaret pressed. Ella hesitated. He was raised by his mother. She's an incredible woman. Strong and hardworking. The silence that followed was heavy, and Ella felt her stomach knotting with tension. "Ella," Margaret began, her voice strained, "you know we only want what's best for you. Are you sure this Caleb is suitable?" "Suitable?" Ella repeated, her voice rising. "What does that even mean?" "He's a good man, Mom. Isn't that enough?" Harold raised a hand, trying to diffuse the tension. "We're not saying he's not a good man, Ella. We just want to make sure you're thinking this through." "I am thinking this through," Ella said firmly. "I love him." The declaration hung in the air, leaving no room for further argument. Margaret and Harold exchanged another glance, their expressions a mixture of worry and resignation. "Bring him to dinner next Sunday," Harold said finally. "We'd like to meet him." Ella left her parents' house that evening feeling both relieved and apprehensive. She had taken the first step, but she knew the real challenge was yet to come. When Ella told Caleb about the dinner invitation, he took it in stride, though she could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "I'll be there," he said, his voice steady. "But are you sure they're ready for this?" "They have to be," Ella said, determination hardening her resolve. "I won't let them dictate my life anymore." The following Sunday, Caleb arrived at the Harpers' home dressed in a crisp white shirt and navy blazer, carrying a bouquet of lilies for Margaret and a bottle of fine wine for Harold. Ella could feel the tension in the room as she introduced him to her parents, but Caleb's charm and warmth quickly began to ease the atmosphere. He spoke eloquently about his work, shared stories about his upbringing, and even managed to make Harold laugh with a witty remark about the challenges of home renovation. Margaret, though polite, remained guarded, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. As the evening wore on, Ella's anxiety began to dissipate. Caleb was winning them over, slowly but surely. But just as she started to relax, an offhand comment from Harold brought the underlying tension back to the surface. "So, Caleb," Harold said, swirling his wine glass. "What made you decide to come to Greenhaven? It's not exactly a place people move to unless they have a reason." Caleb's gaze shifted briefly to Ella before he answered. "I was looking for a change of pace," he said honestly. "City life can be overwhelming, and I wanted to focus on projects that have a more personal touch." "And is that the only reason?" Harold pressed, his tone casual but pointed. Ella's heart sank as she recognized the implication behind her father's words. She opened her mouth to intervene, but Caleb beat her to it. "With all due respect, Mr. Harper, I'm here because I want to be. I've worked hard to build a life I'm proud of, and meeting Ella has only made it better. I care about her deeply, and I intend to treat her with the respect and love she deserves." The room fell silent, Caleb's words hanging in the air like a challenge. Harold studied him for a long moment before nodding slowly. "That's all I needed to hear," he said, a hint of approval in his voice. When Caleb and Ella left that evening, she couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Her parents might not fully understand their relationship yet, but they were willing to try, and for now, that was enough. As the weeks turned into months, Caleb and Ella continued to navigate the complexities of their relationship. They faced judgment from strangers and skepticism from loved ones, but their bond only grew stronger. Caleb often reminded Ella that love was worth fighting for, and she found herself believing it more and more with each passing day. Together, they were rewriting the narrative of what love could be, one that defied expectations and embraced the beauty of difference. Their journey was far from over, but they knew one thing for certain: they were in this together, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Months had passed since Caleb first sat at Ella's family dinner table, and while progress had been made, tension still lingered. Ella's parents, Harold and Margaret, had begun to show some signs of softening toward Caleb, though their acceptance was far from unconditional. Margaret, in particular, remained guarded, her wariness stemming from fears about societal judgment and the challenges Ella and Caleb might face. Despite these struggles, Ella and Caleb were unwavering in their love for one another. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but their commitment to each other gave them the strength to move forward. As whispers about their engagement spread through the small town of Greenhaven, they quickly realized that the community's reactions mirrored the lingering unease within Ella's own family. It was during a quiet evening at the bookstore, a place that had become a haven for both of them, that Caleb proposed. The shop was empty, the soft glow of the setting sun casting golden light across the rows of books. Caleb stood before Ella, holding her hands in his as he spoke from the heart. "Ella, from the moment I met you, my life changed in ways I never imagined. You've shown me a love that's deep, kind, and fearless. I can't imagine my future without you in it. Will you marry me?" Ella's breath caught as tears welled in her eyes. She nodded, a wide smile spreading across her face. "Yes, Caleb. 1,000 times, yes." The following weeks were a whirlwind of wedding planning, but it quickly became clear that not everyone was as thrilled about their engagement as they were. Ella's parents voiced concerns about how the wedding, and their union, might be perceived by the community. Margaret's discomfort, in particular, became a recurring source of tension. One afternoon, as Ella and Margaret sat in the living room discussing wedding details, Margaret's apprehensions came to the surface once again. "I just don't want you to regret this, Ella," Margaret said hesitantly, her voice tinged with worry. "Regret what?" Ella asked, her frustration evident. "Loving someone who makes me happy? Someone who treats me with respect and care?" Margaret sighed, looking down at her hands. "It's not that I don't see how much he cares for you. It's just, this town, this world, it's not always kind to people who don't fit the mold. I worry about what you two might face." Ella reached out and placed her hand on her mother's. "Mom, I'm not asking for the world to be kind. I'm asking for you to support me. To trust that I know what's best for my own life." Margaret's expression softened, her inner conflict evident. Ella could see that her mother's concerns came not from malice but from fear. Fear of judgment. Fear of the unknown. It wasn't about Caleb, it was about the challenges their love might encounter in a world that often rejected what it didn't understand. Meanwhile, Caleb's family was nothing but supportive. His parents, Diane and Robert, traveled from the city to help with wedding preparations, bringing with them a sense of warmth and encouragement. Diane, in particular, quickly bonded with Ella, offering advice and a listening ear whenever doubts crept in. "You've got a good man, Ella," Diane said one afternoon as they arranged flowers for the ceremony. "And he's got a good woman. The two of you are going to be just fine." The wedding day arrived on a bright spring morning, the air filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the sound of chirping birds. The ceremony was held in a picturesque meadow just outside of town, with rows of white chairs arranged beneath a canopy of trees. The setting was breathtaking, a testament to Ella and Caleb's vision for their special day. Ella stood at the edge of the meadow, her heart pounding as she prepared to walk down the aisle. Her father stood beside her, his arm linked with hers. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," Harold said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thanks, Dad," Ella said, her eyes glistening with tears. As the music began to play, Ella took her first step down the aisle. All eyes were on her, but her focus was solely on Caleb, who stood at the altar, his expression one of pure love and awe. When Ella reached Caleb, he took her hands in his, and the world seemed to fade away. Their vows were deeply personal, each word carrying the weight of their journey together. "I promise to stand by you through every storm," Caleb said, his voice ringing out across the meadow. "To love you not despite our differences, but because of them. You are my heart, my home, my forever." Tears streamed down Ella's cheeks as she recited her own vows, her voice trembling with emotion. "I promise to love you fiercely, to fight for us no matter what. You've shown me what true love is, and I'll never let it go." As they exchanged rings and sealed their vows with a kiss, the crowd erupted into applause. Ella glanced at her parents, who sat in the front row. Margaret's eyes were wet with tears, and Harold wore a proud smile. In that moment, Ella felt a deep sense of relief, her parents had finally embraced the love she and Caleb shared. The reception that followed was a lively celebration, filled with laughter, music, and dancing. Caleb's family mingled effortlessly with Ella's friends, and even the townsfolk who had once been skeptical found themselves charmed by Caleb's warmth and charisma. It was during the father-daughter dance that Margaret approached Caleb. She stood hesitantly at the edge of the dance floor, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "May I have a word?" she asked, her voice soft. "Of course," Caleb said, stepping aside with her. Margaret took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the ground. "I owe you an apology," she began. "I've been unfair. I let my fears cloud my judgment, and in doing so, I failed to see what was right in front of me. You make my daughter happy, Caleb. And that's all that matters." Caleb placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression kind. "Thank you, Mrs. Harper. That means a lot to me. And I promise you, I'll always do my best to make Ella happy." Margaret nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "I believe you." As the evening wore on, Ella and Caleb stood hand in hand, watching their loved ones celebrate around them. For the first time, they felt a sense of peace, a certainty that they had made the right choice. Their love had faced challenges, but it had emerged stronger, a testament to the power of resilience and unity. Together, they had broken barriers and defied expectations, proving that love truly knows no boundaries. As the night came to a close, Ella and Caleb shared a dance beneath the stars. The world felt infinite, their future stretched out before them like a blank canvas waiting to be filled with their story. And so, their journey began, not just as individuals, but as partners in a love that had defied all odds. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Together, we can celebrate stories of love, courage, and breaking boundaries. Let's spread the message that love is love, always.